And now, host of Here's to Your Health on LA Talk Live, wellness editor Yvonne Beauvais.
Hello and good day. I have a wonderful guest with me today, and I've known Per Anderson for 5 years now, and I have been witnessed this product kind of from the inception, even from the days of the labeling, and it is probably one of the most profoundly effective products that I've come across in my searches as a wellness editor and as a wellness correspondent. So, Per, what's the most important thing that you would like to talk about to our audience today?
Well, Yvonne, that's a very difficult question to answer, but you have to go back to basics and understand that change is possible. Healing is sometimes we feel very boxed in. And to recognize in the midst of that difficult situation that fundamentally there is the possibility to change. And then to really, how do you approach it? And the product we have goes back to basics. Recognizing what I like to call the Lincoln Logs of life. And there's a long story behind that, but when I was a kid, years ago, I played with Lincoln Logs. The next generation played with Legos. And, it's basically a building block out of which you make things. And I think that fundamentally, in order to understand ourselves, we need to understand what is our building block. What's the Lincoln log of our body? Okay, and if you can begin to understand that, and what I'm going to say is that the water molecule is the Lincoln log of life. Because your body is essentially 70% water molecules. And the question to ask yourself is, the condition of the water molecule, what difference does it make? And that relates to this other issue, which we'll get to, is pH, potential of hydrogen. And our product is all about pH. It's all about addressing the issues of the water, the Lincoln logs of our body.
Well, that is something that I think that over even the last 15 years in the wellness industry, people have become increasingly aware of water. We talk about structured water. We talk about alkaline water. We have bottled water. We don't go any place without water. So water has been a profound understanding of how important it is to life. I even remember watching experiments where they would microwave water and then they would have good water and they'd water the plant with microwave water and with good water, and 1 week later the plant with microwave water would die. So yes, we know that water is important and the structure of water is very important. So what we have here today is a product that's going to address the water or the potential hydrogen inside the human body. So people are conditioned to an understanding and a way to take care of their health. Women, you and I we were conditioned. I was certainly conditioned to growing up here in this country is what I thought was the correct way to take care of my health. And in the end, found out that it wasn't, and I became very ill. So what attitudes do you think that people need to adopt, or attitudes that they need to let go of to understand that there are other paths that they can take in today's world?
We all tend to have a problem in doing anything and ever changing, because what we think or what we understand controls us. And a lot of times what we understand, our mindset, is a subconscious thing we don't understand. People for years told me, don't eat white bread. Well, I liked white bread. Okay, and to me, I thought, what difference? I feel good after I eat it. And that kind of thinking is based on an absolute ignorance of the body. Now, we don't have to become scientists or doctors, but we need to understand that our body is incredibly sophisticated. It knows what to do. Most of the time, we hammer it so badly with it has to do gymnastics to deal with the food, because we've lost perspective on what we're supposed to feed ourselves, and we don't even know it. So it's like we're in a pit of ignorance. No offense meant, but we don't even know. And I'll speak to myself. I mean, if I go back 10 years and just look at where I was mentally towards how I understood my body, frankly, for many years been abusive to myself, not knowing it. And one of the worst things I've done is what I call I've lived in chronic dehydration and not known it. not having enough water, your body is a very radical plumbing system. Radical. In fact, there is essentially 60,000 miles of plumbing in your body. If you take from the large arteries down to your capillaries, you've got 60,000. So if you stop to think about that, you say, okay, what difference does certain things, certain actions take? And I'll tell you one thing. If you don't drink enough water, your body, being as sophisticated as it is, says, okay, I'm not getting enough. I'm going to switch off valves here and there, and I'm going to reroute the water you're giving me to the essential. And I'm going to chronically not route the water you need. And guess what? After a few decades of that, why do we have arthritic, this and that? There's so many things that have to do. In fact, brain function, a whole bunch of things related to just water. Water is this mystical, wonderful thing of life that we have to be aware of. We are mostly water, a creature.
My father, before he passed away, grew up in a generation that somehow didn't believe in drinking water, and we couldn't get him to drink water. And in effect, we watched the brain dehydrate and the vision deteriorate and all of those things for lack of water.
Yeah.
And you're right, and I've realized if you're dehydrated, you feel lightheaded, you spin out. The blood is going to take from every part of your body to ensure it keeps its proper pH. It'll take your calcium, it'll take your water,
Absolutely.
It'll take everything to keep functioning.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Balance 7, because this is your product, and I happen to know the story behind this, which is a pretty fascinating story. Tell me, Per, how you got started with this. And I know Al Simon is the innovator
Absolutely.
of the product, and I had the pleasure of meeting him and actually staying with he and his wife years ago. And please, I would love to hear this from you so that our listening audience and our viewing audience can hear this today.
Well, it's an interesting story. Sometimes you think of how things happen. You need to get almost years of perspective. Say, how did that ever happen? And this is a long story. Frankly, Al Simon, 50 years ago, came up with the essential formula that we now call Balance 7. He didn't know what it was at the time, but he's a very unique, wonderful man who basically thinks outside the box. He began to analyze it, and for decades, it went off and on the shelf, but for decades was analyzing it. After a while, he got tired of trying to explain to people what these unique things he was discovering, and he spent a lot of money validating, and the scientific research came back validating many of his claims. But honestly, essentially what we discovered is what we have is a high pH alkaline water, 11.2, that's as benign as water to drink. And the impact on the body is it produces, if taken properly, it produces an alkaline tide in the body. It does it simply, it does it fast. You don't need to drink 80 ounces of water to get the impact.
Oh, that's a lot.
So if you can, in a very disciplined way, take 1 ounce 3 times a day, you'll help your body deal with acidic crisis or acidic issues that it's dealing with.
For our audience today, would you tell us about alkaline tide? That's a very interesting concept, and I'm sure you can provide a wonderful metaphor to give people a visual as to what that means.
Well, I'm not sure which metaphor you're thinking of, but
You're good at that, though.
if you Google alkaline tide, you'll get a quick description. But essentially, once you eat food, your body, of course, has acidity in the stomach to deal with that.
Right.
And that's the purpose of it. Now, in order for your stomach, the acid cells in your stomach to produce the acidity, there's a natural chemical byproduct. It's producing a high acid. The natural opposite side of the chemical equation, which gets deposited in your bloodstream, is bicarbonates.
Oh.
So when you eat, when you mitigate the acidity, your stomach will reacidify. When it reacidifies, it produces a byproduct, not a bad byproduct, a very good byproduct, an alkalinity. Okay, so when it does that, you have this alkaline tide within your bloodstream. They call it an alkaline tide. Now your small intestine will digest your food, and there's kind of a rematching of acidity and alkalinity, so this tide gets kind of balanced. But the trick is this: when you're fighting acidity in your body, which is in most cases, most illnesses, diseases, et cetera, are acidic crises. Essentially it is. I mean, you talk about cancer. I mean, it's just incredibly understanding to study what's happening, when you have cancer and how acidic it is. But you're fighting this acidic crisis. What we need to do is fight the acidity. Now, Balance 7 taken properly will give you additional alkaline tides to basically wash through your system and hit those hot spots of acidity. It's like the body needs a relief. There's other analogies for this, but when you're under attack, the one thing is to stop the attacker so you can rebuild. The body needs to the offensive, the acidity that's attacking the body to be mitigated, and that's what properly used Balance 7 does.
So American lifestyle, I realize, is a great contributor to this acidosis condition that we're talking about. So we have a high consumption of coffee. A little coffee I don't think hurts anybody. Yeah. We have a high protein diets in this particular, we're changing. We are more fruits and vegetables. Yeah. We have chemicals, we have GMOs, we have pesticides, we have horrible particulates in our atmosphere, we have water that's acidic, and it goes on and on. So we're actually being overwhelmed by an acid condition.
Absolutely.
Beyond the acid that's in our stomach. So it's changing our whole chemistry.
Yeah.
And because of that acidosis, we are becoming sick, because sickness and fungi and molds and yeasts and cancers and bacteria and viruses all thrive in an acidosis condition.
Absolutely.
So what we're talking about is reversing the acidosis condition so the body can heal itself.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome. So what do you think the greatest need is? And we just talked about some of that right now in using Balance 7.
Well, to me, it's understanding the battle. There's no cure-all that I know of, and this isn't a cure-all. On the other hand, when you need a helping hand at a critical moment, if you're at sea adrift and someone throws you a life ring, that's what you need.
Right.
Because, they could teach you swimming lessons. That's not what you need. You need life. If you're having an acidic crisis, there are several things in life you need to do. For one thing, what caused it, lifestyle, eating patterns, exercise, all kinds of things. But changing them in that moment, that decision needs to be made. But what helps you get on your feet again? What helps you begin the battle? Especially when you're having a crisis.
Right.
And that's where I believe the strength of Balance 7 is. It'll help fight the crisis. What people need to really all of us need to remember is health is a mental issue. We need to understand the battle. And in particular, we need to understand this acidity thing. Because if we do, we can begin to take the baby steps that are necessary to adjust our life. And again, remember, it's doable. It's not a Mount Everest.
Right.
It's doable. But as we let things get into our mind and begin to adopt them, one at a time, two at a time, three at a time, we'll begin to experience it. And suddenly we'll say, this wasn't so impossible.
Yes.
But at the moment when you're flat on your back, you need something to help you get started. Balance 7 is an acidic crisis management tool. Acidic crisis management tool.
Remember that, everybody. Acidic crisis management tool. That's important to remember.
It helps you fight the battle when the fire is burning. It helps. Think of acidity as a fire burning, which is, and then how do you quench it? Where's the fire extinguisher?
Because the body wants to heal itself. We were created for balance. Our bodies have a natural propensity to want to bring balance and healing to the organism.
Right.
They're not meant to live in this inflamed condition that most people are in today's world. And this is global. I just came back from Peru, and when I was there, cancer is very high over there, and the maladies that we're experiencing in this country, because they've become westernized in what they're doing, and products have been taken into the country, they're suffering in the same way right now. So I saw the same things going on there that were particularly more an agrarian culture, and they've changed, and I saw the fast food chains there, and I see people sick the same way that they are here.
I'm telling you, we need to understand basic things and just make corrective. I've done a fair amount of work in Africa, and in particular, we took began our major push in Africa with our product. Clean Shield is.
Tell us about Clean Shield, because
Well-
I know this is really,
Well-
this is where I came in when you were getting ready to take this into Africa. So I came in the picture.
Well, I have a wonderful. Al Simon had a passion to help deal with health, and he just believed passionately that it would help. And he asked. He's had a lifelong love of Africa, and he thought, where in the world do I see the greatest needs on a health? And I have a Nigerian business partner who. Wonderful person, and somebody who is passionate about her country and helping deal with health issues and people there. We offered Al an avenue to go to Africa, and we have over 1 million bottles sold. We have stories streaming from all over Nigeria and even some surrounding countries.
I've read some of the testimonies. They've knocked
Just
out malaria in 4 days and left the person immune
extraordinary.
to malaria with this. This is the same product, by the way, everybody. Balance 7 is here in the United States, and Clean Shield is what is over in Africa right now. So just
Exactly.
know that we're talking about the same product here.
I sat down with a young man named Chris, who for 5 years back in the beginning had been giving it to people. We made samples available. And he said after a while they started to treat them like a clinic. And when they ran out, people would be at the gates crying.
Oh my God.
And the story he tells, first I asked him, I said, what really sold you on this? This just looks like water. And what really sold you? Well, he said right in the beginning, he said, we went to a man whose body was half covered with warts and had tried for years to deal with the issue. After a few weeks of consuming Balance 7 or Clean Shield and a topical application, the problem went away.
Oh my goodness.
The man was in tears, saying, where has this been? At any rate, Chris said this was the turning point in his mind, that this was something unique. And then he said over the 5 years, he could 2,000 different applications. Towards the end of the interview, I said, Chris, I try to get balanced. I said, Chris, tell me an area where you've just found this doesn't have an impact balancing the pH.
Right.
That doesn't have an impact. And he looked at me and said, I can't think of an area. He said, the issue is not what area it can help, but how to apply it. But anyway, that was a rather interesting testimonial from
Well, you
him.
just answered my next question.
Oh, what was
I was going to ask you, what impact does this bring to a person's sense of health and well-being? Well, my goodness, if you're covered in warts, I can't imagine on every level how that would make a person feel, just the shame and the feeling untouchable and not wanting anybody to look at them and nobody wanting to deal with them, wondering if they're contagious. That had to be a nightmare of an experience to live through.
Right.
And to have relief come to you because of something that you drank,
Yeah.
which actually can only benefit your body. And to my understanding, there's no contraindications to taking Balance 7. It doesn't
No.
interfere if someone's even taking a medication. There's no interference with it.
Right.
So it is a benign substance that has a very powerful and effective effect on the
Right.
human body.
Well, it really points back to the danger of acidity, which points back to the danger of a bad diet, which points back to many mistakes we make, which we do need to correct.
Right.
But you see, we just have to understand it's not as impossible a thing as we make it out to be. People say, well, if I can't have my McDonald's and fries, what am I going to do?
Right.
When you really get down to it, there are some extraordinary things you can eat once you get into it, and you actually feel good after it.
Right. Like greens, because greens are very alkalizing.
Absolutely. In fact, when
Yes.
you're listening, when you start to experience your body talking back to you and saying, thank you very much, I really appreciated that, and you feel your energy boost, then you begin to think, well, you know what? I didn't have to take a pill for that.
Right.
And if you kind of combine a number of things like that, certainly you're setting your body free to live and do the way it's meant to. I read a book by a guy that just kind of blew my mind, and it's kind of out there. In the beginning, I used to think anti-aging was a selling gimmick. But in all the research that's happened the last 20, 25 years, it's not hype. If you really understand, they're discovering things about the body that really make a difference. And this guy was talking about the metabolic curve, the life curve. and he kind of traditionally you're at around 28 or whatever. You're at the high point of the curve. You hit to 40, and it's diving. Time you get to 60, 65, you're kind of getting the lower percentage of the curve.
Right.
The fact is, that statement 70 is the new 40.
Yes.
It's not so far out as you make
Yay.
if you actually take this seriously, take your body seriously.
Right.
Your body wants to be well.
Because we all want to be purposeful and productive to the very ends of our lives.
Absolutely.
I know we have some really interesting stories to share. I also took this 5 years ago. I was struggling with mercury poisoning. And baby boomers, there seems to be a certain age, and it could be 45, it could be 50, where all of a sudden everything bad, we'll just qualify, just say bad, that you ever did to your body, all of a sudden shows up. If you did drugs, if you drank too much, if you ate wrong, if you didn't exercise, if you had amalgams in your mouth and you had mercury, there seems to be a trigger point in the human body where the immune system is affected by it, and boom, it's like you quickly just start to go downhill.
Yeah.
And I've seen it happen in more people than not. So many things we do when we're young we think won't catch up with us. I'm here to tell you it does. It does catch up with you.
Yeah.
So I went through a very severe detox. Taking it and coming out the other side was amazing. And I was so happy that I met Al all those many years ago,
Yeah,
because that was
yeah.
my introduction to the
Right,
product.
right.
But you have some really interesting stories that you have a story of a quarterback, which I thought was fascinating, and the kitten story. And the kitten story is powerful. So you tell whichever one you want to tell first.
Okay, well, I'll tell the quarterback story first. I love sports and watch football a lot. Met a guy named, what's his name here? Sonny, and he played for the 49ers in the 70s. After retired, he had problems with his knees that developed, arthritic problems, and he fought it for years. Cortisone shots.
Oh.
Sonny Brazil
Okay.
is the name of the guy. Sorry. And he met Al. Al said, "Here, take
Try
Balance
this."
7." Within 2 weeks, that chronic arthritic problem went away. And frankly, he's prescribed it to friends of his in the industry, semi-pros, and it has a tremendous benefit because arthritis is related to acidity, excess acidity. And he found it very helpful. So that's the one testimony. You ready for the kitten?
Oh, this was the most profound story. I looked at all the pictures 1 through 6 of this kitten, and I went, oh my goodness. So go for it, Per. Tell us about the kitten.
I don't know if I could have paid this lady $10,000 to produce a story as good as this. This came unsolicited through email. This lady spends her time, well, it must be a lovely lady who loves kittens, cats and kittens, and she rescues them. Well, she had a kitten that her friend said, "You better put this one down," a fatal eye virus. Just highly infected, blind, and it's a disease that they don't ever get their sight back.
Oh my.
And her friend said, "You better put this one down." Well, someone had just given her some Balance 7 and said that it was helpful. So she said, "Let me give it 3 days." So 24/7, she soaked the eyes. She injected a few milliliters into the stomach, which was full of worms. A little bit later in the process, she put in the ears where it was full of ear mites. And the story she tells will blow your mind. And she blogged it. In fact, I'll read a little bit of it. "I rescue sick, injured, homeless cats and recently found an 8-week-old kitten that was diagnosed with a fatal virus. Good friend of mine gave me a little Balance 7 to give orally. Day 1. I'm taking pictures of the kitten, which are so upsetting to look at that people are in tears of viewing it. But if Balance 7 is as good as they say, I want before and after pictures. Day 2. The kitten is still alive. She still looks and sounds terrible, but instead of lying flat on her back, unable to get up, she's in a crouched position. Day 3. She's in a sitting position, taking a few steps on her own. Day 4. And she purrs. I'm starting to see the miracle this kitten needed. I'm in awe now. She's eating on her own. Her eyes are still closed and white, and I'm accepting that she will be blind at this point, but she's alive and improving by the hour. It's okay that she is blind because she is in her forever home with me here." Okay, no way I can trust anyone else with this kitten. Day 5. To my belief, the milky white cloud in her right eye is starting to fade, and I can see a slight shape of a pupil starting to appear. Day 6, I was right. Her right eye is open today, is color in a full pupil. And then she describes when she did the ear mites. Day 7, let there be sight. The left has a hint of color. This is unreal. Kittens this young do not recover from this virus, and the ones that do are blind. Rachel is neither dead or blind. So here's the story that
It was profound.
Well, then she sent pictures to boot, which is basically like, was astonishing. But and again, it's the human system, the sophistication of our system left alone. But things we do impede on what our body wants to do. And I'm sorry, acidity is one of those things. And a whole nother subject is the things we do that contribute to acidity.
Yes.
It's a whole nother subject, and that has to be addressed if you're really going to deal
That's
with
another show.
deal with life issues. But what tools can you use to help along the way? That's what we're talking about.
Smooth Skin, another product which is a little bit stronger than the product that you drink. I do use this, I'll confess. I do like it. I use it morning and night. And I found it really interesting when I first started to use it. Aging actually takes place under the skin because there's so many accumulated toxins from products that men and women might use on their skin. And I actually could smell an off-gassing coming out of my skin. And I went, "Ooh, wow, what's that?" and it's a fabulous product.
Yeah.
So these are all products that are derived out of the same formulation.
Okay.
Okay, Per, I would like for you to tell our listening audience today and viewing audience how they can contact you.
Well, we would love to introduce Balance 7 to you. Call our get on the come to our website.
Okay.
It's balance7-la.com. Read up on more about what we've been talking about, and go to our contact page, and there'll be instructions how to get a hold of us.
So they have your phone number and email.
Absolutely.
And everything is on there. One more time, tell them your website. One more time.
It is it's balance7-la.com.
Excellent. Well, I want to thank you so much, Per, for being with us today. To me, this is a very exciting product in a time and day. It's actually the time has arrived for a product like this. My name is Yvonne Beauvais. I'm your wellness correspondent, and I'm co-host to Josh Lane on Here's to Your Health with LA Talk Live. Always keeping my finger on the pulse of new and innovative products and services in the health and wellness industry. Thank you so much, Per. What a delight. Just wonderful.
Privilege.
So I have more people that are interested in wanting to use and to
Are we
find
having
out,
fun yet?
Yes, no, about Balance 7.
Absolutely.
And I'm truly a believer. So
Yeah, it'll be fun to work with work with you and to
Thank you.
Continue to hear stories.
It's probably one of the most effective products that I've actually found that really.
Well, it's to some degree it's a rescue tool, and then it's a maintenance tool. It's both. And if you learn how to use it,
Rescue and maintenance. I like that.
And
rescue and maintenance. That's
and then
excellent.
figure out what else we're supposed to be doing.
So we didn't even get into how to say we take it 3 times a day, 1 ounce 3 times a day. So that would be
Absolutely.
like a shot glass, I suppose.
Exactly. It's
1
kind of
ounce
funny.
3 times a day. Do you take it with food or apart from food?
Apart from food, should have emphasized that.
Okay.
On an empty stomach.
On an empty stomach.
Yes.
And that's the best way.
On an empty stomach.
And if someone has to take a medication, there's no contraindication with that.
No.
And you can put it topically on your body.
Absolutely.
I have somebody who had a swimmer's rash. Would it work for swimmer's rash?
Yes, you spray, dry. Less is more. Don't overdo it. And spray and dry.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. So I guess the world is the limit at this point.
Oh yeah, we have big plans.
I can't think of a country around the world right now that couldn't use a product like this. Because I travel, I do see the condition of people's health, and most people are in an acidosis condition these days.
A normal condition.
Yes, I see
Normal
autoimmune
condition.
disorders. I see
Yeah.
high levels of cancer. I see all of those things.
All right.